My name is Luke Sheridan, as you all know now, and I'm the Donna Joe Morse Client Counseling Chair. I, along with the competition associate Jonathan Clovis, would like to welcome you to this evening's final round. This competition bears the name of Donna Joe Morse as a dedication to the legacy and memory of the late Donna Joe Morse, a 1991 graduate of Albany Law School. Upon graduation, Ms. Morse remained at the law school to teach an introduction to lawyering to first-year students. During her tenure, she, with Professor Patricia Rahan, co-directed the Sawyer workshops, an academic program created to enhance student success in law school. In 1996, she was awarded the Kate Stoneman Award for her tenacity, dedication, and devotion to her students, and for promoting excellence in legal education. Ms. Morse also served as a faculty advisor to the law school's American Bar Association negotiation team from 1991 to 1995. And during that time, she successfully guided the negotiations team to 5 regional championships. Due to cancer, Ms. Morse passed away in September 1996 at the age of 39. This competition is held in honor of her memory as a teacher, mentor, and friend. We would like to extend our gratitude to Mr. John Morse, Donna Joe's husband, Mr. Lawrence Yance, Donna Joe's father, and Patty Wenzel, Donna Joe's sister, for joining us tonight in our remote audience. After speaking with Mr. Morse and Mr. Yance, it became clear to me how much they truly appreciate this competition, specifically for keeping Donna Joe's memory alive. Having competed in both the client counseling and negotiations competitions last year, I can personally attest to the impact that these competitions have on student learning and development. Donna Joe's legacy lives on in each of these competitions, and through that, she continues to help students realize and refine skills and strengths that they will surely use through the rest of their lives. The theme of this year's competition is contracts and transactional law. And I know the thought of dealing with contract law beyond 1L may send shivers down many law students' spines, but I like to think that we managed to have some fun with it throughout this year's competition. This year, we had an astounding 29 teams participate. All the teams did a remarkable job, and it reflected in judges' comments and scores. For all the participants who have joined us here tonight, you should feel an immense pride in yourselves. The winning team from this evening will go on to represent the school at regionals and hopefully nationals. Tonight, you will see our 2 final teams engage in a client counseling session. Each of the consultation sessions are designed as an initial meeting between a client and an attorney. Tonight, the client will be following the fact pattern that is outlined in your program. The competitor's objective is to learn as many facts as possible, apply the law, and advise the client. Each competitor has 30 minutes to do this, and following that 30 minutes consultation session, each competitor has 10 minutes for a self-evaluation. And at this time, I ask we all rise for the judges.
Please be seated, everyone.
To judge our event this evening, please welcome the Honorable Richard Rivera, the Honorable Christina Ryba, and Mr. Andrew Safranko. Judge Rivera is a graduate of Colgate University and Albany Law School. His legal career began as an associate counsel for the law office of Gasper and Castile. He then went on to become staff counsel for the Albany Law School Family Violence Clinic, where his career in family court began. As staff counsel, Judge Rivera represented victims of domestic violence with all matters pertaining to orders of protection, custody, and support. Judge Rivera also served as an attorney for children in both Albany and Rensselaer counties. In November of 2014, Judge Rivera was elected to a 10-year term in Albany County Family Court, becoming the first person of color elected to a countywide bench and the first Latino elected to any bench in the entire 3rd Judicial District. In 2019, Judge Rivera was appointed to the Board of Advisors of the National Consortium on Racial and Ethnic Fairness in the Courts. And on January 1st, 2022, Judge Rivera was appointed Supervising Family Court Judge to the 3rd Judicial District, becoming the first person of color to hold that position. On February 22nd, 2022, New York State Chief Judge Janet DeFiore appointed Judge Rivera co-chair of the Franklin H. Williams Judicial Commission, established to develop programs to improve the perception of fairness within the court system and ensure equal justice in New York State. The Honorable Christina Ryba was elected in 2015 by the people in the 3rd Judicial District to serve as Justice of the Supreme Court of New York. Prior to beginning her term in 2016, she held various positions in the court system, the Office of Court Administration, and in the New York State Supreme Court Appellate Division, 3rd Department. Judge Ryba is Secretary of the Association of Justices of the Supreme Court of the State of New York, President of the Albany County Bar Foundation, past President of the Albany County Bar Association, and a trustee of Albany Law School, where she chairs the Law Committee and is a member of the Executive Committee. Andrew Safranko is an attorney and founding member of LaMarche Safranko Law, focusing on personal injury litigation, professional discipline, and criminal defense. Since 1999, Andrew has represented thousands of clients on issues ranging from major felonies and complex white-collar crimes to misdemeanors and violations in both state and federal court. Andrew is accomplished in all aspects of criminal litigation and personal injury law. He has successfully litigated many high-profile criminal cases, argued appellate matters, and recovered millions of dollars for clients in personal injury matters. In addition, Andrew has represented numerous doctors, lawyers, nurses, and pharmacists faced with professional discipline charges or allegations. Mr. Safranko is a graduate of the Albany Academy, Emory University, and Albany Law School. Mr. Safranko has received many awards and recognitions for his legal work, including, but not limited to, 2020 Best Lawyers in America, New York Super Lawyers, 2019 Troy Police Benevolent Association President's Award, Top 100 Criminal Defense Attorneys, and 2021 Distinguished Alumni Award for the Albany Academies. Our final teams this evening are Ellen Gabelmann and Christina Jefferson, and Nikita Nayar and Shivani Damera. Serving tonight as the client is Michael Badalamenti. And finally, we have a moot court board member, Joseph Anais, who will be serving as our official timekeeper. The competitors must abide by the designated time limits. However, the judges, in their discretion, may allow for additional time. Now, I would like to invite Professor Joseph Connors, the Client Counseling Competition Advisor, to say a few words.
Thank you, Luke, and may it please the court. Thank you for being here tonight. A table and a few chairs. That's where it often begins. Every day in law firms and other legal offices around the country. What happens when an attorney invites a client or potential client to sit down is really sacred. Protected. It's founded in time-honored traditions of trust that it often isn't easy to establish. That's at the core of tonight's competition is how does an attorney meet with somebody new, probably somebody they haven't met before, and develop that trusting relationship, setting the stage for moving forward.
This meeting is being recorded.
From the attorney's perspective, this relationship will not only rely on the knowledge of the promise and the limits of the law, but also a set of very specialized skills to develop that trust. The goal here is to break down obstacles that get in the way of that trust so that the attorney and client can work together and move forward to solve the presenting problem, or maybe a problem that the client never even knew existed. Clients are often afraid when they enter this room and sit down. They have fears that might be founded in their own egos, pride, embarrassment, shame, fears of how they might be perceived, or the consequences of some wrongful action that they took that they now regret. They might have fears, including some sort of sense of injustice, that someone or some entity wronged them and that they deserve some sort of compensation for that wrong. The fears might involve anger. The fears might involve jealousy. The fears might often involve a lack of information and assumptions that the client is making. The fears might not only involve them, but fears about other people close to them. Some clients fear of losing what they have, while other clients fear of not having what they deserve. Sometimes a client doesn't even have insight into all these fears, and it's the attorney's job to see past the words and put all the pieces together to help the client gain insight. The problem is that clients often fear their attorneys as well, at least at the beginning of the relationship. So there's another obstacle there. Tonight's competition is a chance for the two teams to show different approaches of interviewing and counseling clients to help address the client's hurt and fears and foster some sort of hope to move forward. The teams, as mentioned by Luke, all have to deal with the contract-based problems, but the skills that they're going to apply today and that you're going to get a chance to see as flies on the wall can be applied to many different substantive areas. The skills include developing rapport with the client, explaining confidentiality in a way that encourages the client to open up and be honest, even with embarrassing information. The skills involve setting some expectations about what the relationship is founded on and what the client can expect during the meeting. The attorneys today are going to be challenged to ask questions in a skillful manner, based not only on what they think might be relevant under the terms of the law, but questions that are based on what they see or observe. They might need to go off their original plan and improvise depending on what they hear or observe from their clients in developing those questions. Certainly, the attorneys are going to need to show active listening. They're going to need to reassure their clients if they're being heard and that they understand to the degree that they can what they're articulating. There's going to be a need for the attorneys to ask important follow-up questions that are informed by their knowledge of the law. And as I mentioned before, questions geared towards questioning possible assumptions that are being made to help the client or to gently guide the client into realizing that some of those assumptions might not be founded in fact, and that there might be more information necessary to fully understand the problem. The attorneys today are going to be expected to figure out priorities. They're going to be expected to at least begin to explore some options that are available to the client, and do that in a manner that complies with different ethical standards. There will be ethical challenges presented tonight, and it'll be interesting to see how the teams deal with those. In the end, the teams will be assessed on how well they are in not only understanding the problem, discovering the facts, but figuring out what the client's goals and values are and figuring out options to advance those interests. And in the end, make a decision about how to proceed. Oftentimes those decisions are founded on an understanding of weighing risk and benefits and collateral consequences to others that might be impacted by the situation. So why are all these skills important? For one, being effective with these skills helps advance the public's perception of the profession. Attorneys need to be trusted. Attorneys need to be individuals that show empathy, to show that they are problem solvers, to show that they are client-centered and are there to help guide and hopefully stop some of the pain and to get their clients on a path that moves them in a positive direction. But they're also important to help clients avoid problems altogether. A lot of the practice of law is preventative, so perhaps that will come up tonight as well. These skills will not only help our clients get jobs, oftentimes their first jobs, but be successful in those jobs. And as mentioned, they're transferable. So many of our students will not go into contract law. When I heard that tonight's competition was focused on contracts, I had some of the shivers that Luke mentioned earlier. I'm sitting in here with Professor Watkins calling on me and me probably sitting down when I didn't know what I was talking about. But hopefully I learned some skills that I could use. And our students are excellent at this. I've seen students around the country as I followed our winning teams to regional and national and even international competitions. Albany Law School are national champions in client interviewing and counseling. So it's one of our strengths here, and I encourage you all to take Professor Jahar's client interviewing and counseling class or other classes that give you the chance to practice in our clinical programs, for example. With that being said, I think soon we're gonna see the magic happen here as the attorneys welcome their clients. Thank you.
All right, and now for the fun part. Our first team to compete tonight will be Nikita Nayar and Shivani Damera.
Please proceed.
Hi, my name is Nikita Nayar. And I'm Shivani Damera.
Counselors, can you please bring your mics a little closer? Yes. Thank you.
Is this better? Or,
Yes.
okay. Sorry, so my name is Nikita Nayar. It's spelled Nikita. Last name Nayar. Yes. And my name is Shivani Damera. So it's Shivani, and then Damera, Damera.
Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Nikita. Nice to meet you. We will be sitting at this table over here, so make yourself comfortable.
Nice to meet you.
Yep.
How are you doing today? Did you find our office okay?
Yep,
Great.
I'm used to the drive, came over from Schenectady, so
Okay.
not too far.
That's good. Yeah. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, my name is Nikita Nayar. I use she, her pronouns. And my name is Shivani Damera. I also use she, her pronouns. How would you like to be addressed today?
You can address me by he, him pronouns.
All right. And do you prefer being called Leon or Mr. Dust?
Leon's fine.
Great. Okay. So my first question for you, Leon, is have you ever been to an attorney before regarding this or any other matter?
So sort of, part of my matter has to do with a business deal, and we did have an attorney in that deal,
Okay.
but it's kind of related, I guess.
Okay. All right. So you might be familiar with some of the things that I talk about right now, but I'll go into them anyways.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to give you an overview of what our session is going to be like today. Shivani will go over some housekeeping matters. And then during the session, we'll ask you about your problem.
We will ask you some questions to clarify things as we go. And then we will try to figure out the best solution for you to move forward.
Okay.
So now Shivani will take over.
Yeah. So I'm gonna just cover a few things. So the first is just regarding the matter of fees. So just a reminder, this initial consultation is free. At the end of our session, if you choose to have a representative, we will talk a little bit more about what our fees look like going forward. And then the next thing is just regarding attorney-client privilege. So basically what that just means is that anything we talk about today is confidential. So that just means that we won't share what we discussed today. And this is regardless of whether you choose to have us represent you or not. So we really encourage you to kind of share as much as you can as you remember it. If you remember anything later on, you can just feel free to call or email us and give us that information because that'll help further inform us further. And then with that, you might see us taking notes. So anything we write down will also be confidential. And we might be looking down as we write. I just want to reassure you that we are paying attention to you. And then the last thing is just regarding our conflicts check. So we had our secretary run a conflicts check. And so what that basically means is that there's no, conflict between you and any of our current or prior clients. So we're all set on that front.
Okay.
All
sounds
right,
good.
so do you have any questions for us at this point?
Not in regards to any of what you just said.
All right, cool. So at any point, if you have any questions, please feel free to stop us and ask your question. If you think of something later, reach out to us. We really want this to be a two-way conversation and for you to get all the information that you need so that you're able to make the best choice for yourself.
Okay. Sounds good.
So with that being said, what brings you in here today?
Yeah, so you see, I'm a businessman, right? I'm a shareholder in a privately held corporation called Frozen Fresh Foods. Are either of you familiar with us? Do you use our services?
No. So can you tell us a little bit more about what you said, Frozen Fresh Foods?
Yeah, Frozen to Fresh Foods.
Okay.
With a 2 in it.
I see.
Yeah, so you see, I'm really passionate about our business. And so I think in order for me to convey to you the injustice that's been done to me and my company, I should tell you a little bit about our product. So our objective is to serve the entire American market with healthy and nutritious frozen food delivered direct to door. As part of that, we have a wide selection of foods. We've got really a great variety. If you were looking for a Thanksgiving dinner, we've got all the fixings you could look for in something like that. If you wanted more like seafood, hey, we got that too. You get clam chowder, good as you'd find in a Boston market. We've got pizza too, really good pizza. Actually, one of the ways we took off was there's this food reviewer online who tried one of our slices and he said it was probably one of the best slices he'd ever had, up there with, a classic slice from Brooklyn, something like that.
So it sounds like, your product is really important to you.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit more maybe about when you first started your company?
Yeah, so I didn't start my company actually. My father started the company back in 2001, and I took over it after he retired around 2010.
Okay.
But yeah, so our company was doing really well, especially with COVID. Once that kind of kicked off, we really found our niche there.
Right.
And we had started off kind of regionally as sort of based in the heart of the Capital District and then expanded from there. And at the height of COVID, we were really servicing the entire country. And we got to the point where actually Congo, the big online market retailer, they were looking into acquiring us. But then things came crashing down. Then just stuff started coming out about us online. I shouldn't say coming out, it was lies. It was all slander against us being posted online. And now my business is just crumbling, frankly. I can't sleep at night. I've been trying and I'm really kind of losing it, if I'm honest.
Yeah. That sounds like a really difficult situation.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about, you said, so there's like this lies that are kind of coming out on the internet. Can you tell us a little bit more about who has been sharing those things or posting those things online?
Yeah, so it started back in March of this year. At first, well, it started kind of after we'd had this news of an acquisition deal by Congo. And people were saying at first, oh, it'll take jobs away from the area, like, worried about stuff like that. But then really out of nowhere, these ads started popping up on like Facebook and, other platforms like that, just alleging this off the wall stuff. Like they were saying we used subpar, quality products in our foods. They were saying that we were, doing things that were unhealthy. They said we put dangerous chemicals in the food. The height of it was they started to accuse us of trafficking and of using slave and sweatshop labor in our practices.
So just to clarify, I mean human trafficking.
Yes, human trafficking. But yeah, and I know who is behind it. It's this guy, Darren Smith, right? He used to be a shareholder in our company. But to be frank, the guy was kind of a moron. He had an idea for how he wanted to direct our company. He wanted us to just ship food to restaurants and other sort of, services and retailers, which frankly, that's not going to work for the way our market is structured. So we forced him out of the company back in, I think it was 2015, we did that. And he really left on bad terms. He said, oh, I'm going to get revenge against you guys. And he left, and we didn't hear from him for a while. Eventually, he started this other company called Quick Meals, and they started doing okay.
Okay.
And then I know in my heart of hearts, right, when we announced this deal with Congo, he came in and he decided, all right, look at them, they're doing successful. My company, it's okay, but we're not up to the frozen fresh standard.
Right.
So we're going to take them down. And so he started making all these ads, posting everything online, and really just creating this concerted effort at taking us down. And that then culminated in, there was this article in the USA Gazette. And it said, it didn't really, say the allegations as if they were true against us, but they were covering them and sort of, saying how, oh, this is how allegations like this can affect the company.
I see. And so just to take a little bit of a step back, can you tell us a little bit about why? So it sounds like you kind of had this bad relationship with Darren, right? Is that correct? Since like 2015, since he left.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about why you believe it's him or his company that has been posting these kind of false allegations about your company?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see who else it could be. Like, we left on such bad terms, and we're a niche market. There aren't that many other competitors. So who else would really want to be posting all this stuff against us?
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit more about the company that he started?
Yeah, so Quick Meals, I know they followed his model where they're servicing, restaurants mainly directly. They're doing okay from what I can tell, but I don't know. The one thing I do know is I got my hands on actually this report of theirs from one of their ex-employees.
Okay.
And I know that they're kind of skirting around FDA standards.
All right.
And so I think we might go about dropping that sometime soon, because let me be frank, I want to take him down. He took my company down. He's ruined my reputation. This man needs to pay for what he's done to me and my company.
Right. So it sounds like it's been really frustrating for you to kind of have something that you really worked hard on to like suffer. So
Yeah.
you're feeling frustrated and angry, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So with the allegations that have been, sort of coming out against your company, so you feel that they have no basis in truth?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where do you think, maybe those certain things would have come up from? Were those things that were discussed maybe at all in meetings before, or?
No, I mean, I think he just made it up. I mean, we started as a small local business that was really just serving the local region. We weren't using sweatshop labor
Right.
or anything like that.
Mhm.
No, why would we even have an interest in that? Where our business is making food and shipping it to people's doorsteps. What along in that process would involve us trafficking people?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more maybe about your process of how, like who your employees are?
Yeah, so we're a mid-sized company. We got kind of the standard corporate structure, I guess you'd say, for a privately held corporation. couple shareholders, myself being one of them. We've got a board of directors. I'm CEO, other executive offices. As for employees, we've got around 200 employees. A lot of them work more on the code end of things for the infrastructure for the website, while others work more in preparing the foods, getting things sent out. But some of that also is on subcontractors in the supply chain.
And so you mentioned you have subcontractors. Where are those? Do you know, I have an understanding where those subcontractors are from or based?
There's a variety of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what happened after these allegations started coming out about your company? Because you did mention something about an acquisition deal. So what happened with that?
Yeah, so we had this acquisition deal where Congo had approached us, right? And they were going to buy us out, buy out myself and all the shareholders. On top of that, I was actually slated to get a consulting position with them. And we'd had months of negotiations. We had this memorandum eventually that we came up with in March. We both signed it. And as part of that agreement, we had a year-long period, right, where we were going to work a bit on integrating things between our businesses, and then they were going to finally execute the purchase at the end of that year. And that was in March, so that would have been this coming March that would have been executed.
Sorry, just to correct, March 2022 or March 2023?
2023 is when it would have been executed.
Okay.
So yeah, back in September, kind of when this USA Gazette article came out and things were kind of at their height and my business was in smoldering ruins, I get a call from Beth Jesus, the CEO of Congo, and he says that basically they're going to pull the plug, that they don't want to go through with this deal. You know, they kind of put it more softly than that. They said, we're going to put things on hold for now. And, you know, I said, okay, we'll see what we can do and take care of it. And I mean, obviously they don't want to acquire a business with all these rumors floating around. So, you know, I think we really need to get on quashing these allegations against us to, you know, in order to move forward with that.
Right. And sorry.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, so you said that Beth Jesus was the one who called and spoke to you about this, about, you know, ending or putting your contract on hold?
Correct.
Okay. So in the memo, you said that there was a memo that was written out that kind of detailed the process.
Yeah.
So in that memo, was there any language about what would happen if, you know, there was some sort of situation where maybe one of you wanted to back out?
So I don't remember it really contemplating what would happen if someone wanted to pull out. The full agreement, you know, the key parts of it that I remember, right, is they were going to buy out all our assets. They were going to buy out the other shareholders. So complete transfer of the company's assets to them. We in this year-long interim, we're going to be working on kind of harmonizing things between our businesses in preparation for them taking over everything. And then I was going to get a $300,000 bonus, which would have been great, would have helped me put my kids through college, as well as a consulting position for, I think, the next year, while they worked on getting everything up and running. And then we go from there. And so again, I'm not certain if that was something in the document. I can certainly send it to you.
Yes, it would be helpful if you could send any of this memo that you have, and then also any communication you have with them that can include any emails, any notes you have regarding any calls, anything like that, text messages. That'll just, again, give us kind of a fuller picture of kind of what's been happening.
Okay, I will say that's a lot of documents. This has been months of negotiations that kind of produced this. So if you're talking about all the emails, that's probably going back, you know, 3 or 4 months. Do you want me to like zip up my whole inbox and send it to you, or?
Yeah, so we can kind of discuss that further, what
Okay.
like those next steps will be like, and we'll talk a little bit about at the end what the next steps will be like in regards to that. But just as kind of a reminder now to kind of think about that stuff.
Okay.
And then so also with your contract, so you mentioned that it's on hold. Has there been anything in regards to, has there been updates regarding that at all since September?
No, not really. Things have been on pause. You know, we'd started working with them on sharing some of the code behind our website infrastructure with them so they could start implementing that on their end. And ever since I got that call, they've stopped talking to our techs. They've stopped really returning our calls. So nothing since.
I see. Okay. And can you just tell us a little bit more about why you were kind of interested in, I guess, starting this, having this our relationship with Congo, or having kind of this acquisition? What brought you to that?
Yeah, so they reached out to us originally.
Mhm.
And you know, I saw a bunch of good things from it. Again, my mission is to serve the entire country with our product if possible. And I see them, they're a very large, successful online retailer.
Right.
If we could get integrated into their market, then great. And that then transformed into, hey, they want to buy us completely. Sure, why not? And I mean, it came with a lot of benefit to me,
Right.
you know, and I want to make sure that, you know, I'm able to take care of my family and my kids. So, you know, I thought all things considered, one, it was my dream being realized, albeit by a different
Mhm.
company. And two, you know, me being able to retire securely.
Right. I mean, it sounds important to kind of have that legacy, it sounds like,
Of
for
course.
yourself and your company.
Right. So I have more questions about the acquisition itself, the acquisition deal. Was
Mhm.
this, public knowledge? Do you think Darren would have known about the sort of workings of this deal?
Yeah, both our companies announced it in March. Before that, there'd kind of been rumblings that leaked to the public, but we made it official in March. And I think he definitely heard about that. I mean,
Right.
you know, all the stuff online started to come out right after we had signed off on this deal and made it public.
And to what extent really had you, made this deal public? Did you, was it disclosed that there would be a year-long execution period before you were bought over, or how much knowledge did the public have?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't share the whole agreement, but
Yeah.
we made a public statement to the press basically saying Congo will be acquiring Frozen Fresh in the near future.
Mhm. And have you done, you or Congo done any investigation to who's been kind of releasing these comments or posting these comments on, like, in the media?
What do you mean by investigation?
So, I mean, have you hired anybody, or even had your like IT department, for example, try to determine who's been posting these comments, or these like art, like, again, like helping to post these articles in the media?
Yeah, we didn't really do that. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm certain that Darren's behind this, so I don't really see the need to hire a PI to go in and tell me what I already know.
And so, just to get a better understanding, so I know you feel very strongly that it might be him, but has there been any evidence in any of these postings, or again, like, has there been any comments by any employees or anybody else that may have a relationship that is like kind of tied Darren to these comments?
So I know he shared a couple things on Facebook, and like he's liked a couple posts and, you know, commented under things like, oh, this is, you know, exactly like them. I know that they do this.
Mhm.
And I think he also talked to the reporter at the USA Gazette. I think one of his comments was quoted in that.
Okay.
Um,
It might be helpful, so if you can share that article for us.
Yeah, sure
so we can
thing.
have that for reference.
Have you had any contact with Darren since he, was forced out of your company?
Not really. I saw the guy on the street once and he gave me a dirty look, but that was it.
Okay. All right.
And is there anybody else kind of who's had negative feelings towards you or your company that you can think of?
Not that I know of. I mean, you know, we're a big company. We occasionally have to let people go, and not anyone to my knowledge though that stick out like Darren does. You know?
And to your knowledge, kind of as far as you know, are there any organizations or anything who have been kind of backing, also making these comments as well, or is it mainly these, like, is it just individual comments on the media?
Organizations, I wouldn't say so. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Darren's using his company against mine. I wouldn't rule that out as possible.
Have they made any comments?
Not publicly that I can think of, no.
And also, it'd be helpful to understand, so kind of what maybe what the loss of this acquisition might mean for your company, if you could kind of talk a little bit about, so if this deal with Congo doesn't go through, what would that mean for your company?
Yeah, I mean, we're in ruins right now, frankly, is the thing. We've lost, our sales have plummeted something like 75% since they were at their height during COVID.
Mhm.
I mean, I hope if everything falls through with Congo, we're able to pull things together and, quash the allegations and get things up and running again. But let me be frank, I see Congo as our way out. If the thing with Congo goes through, then we don't need to worry about it anymore. It's in their hands now.
Right.
But, maybe the company recovers. I'm not so sure about it though.
Mhm. And so you feel like these comments have kind of directly, as a result of these comments, your company has directly kind of seen the impact in your sales.
Yeah, absolutely. They've ruined the company and they've ruined me personally, things started coming out saying that I was the one behind the trafficking and all this other stuff. I, as the CEO, was running everything. So, I'm not just looking for my company to be compensated for its damages.
Right.
I've basically become a black sheep in the industry. I want to make sure that I am able to recover for what's happened to me as well.
Right.
So what would your ideal outcome be from this scenario? What are your goals, from coming in and just talking to us right now?
Yeah, first and foremost, I want Darren to pay. No doubt in my mind, he's behind all this. I want to sue him, ideally. I want to get back from him what I can get. I want him to pay for what he's done to my company and to me personally. And second to that, if we can get the Congo deal back on the table, that'd be great. I think, we quashed the allegations. Maybe we're able to, get that back on the table. I don't really want to sue Congo. I mean, they're big in the industry. If I sue them around, suddenly I'm blacklisted from everywhere, basically, and out of a job forever. But I mean, if there's no other way to get it back on the table, I might be willing to do it. The stuff that's coming to me personally through this, I might be able to retire happily. So, that's an incentive, I guess.
Okay. And so just understand a little with Congo. You said you're not interested in suing, but have they made any sorry, let me take a step back. So they mentioned they want to hold the contract right now. They're not willing to go forward at the moment because of these allegations. Have they said anything regarding if they're not able to if you're not able to mitigate these the results of these comments, have they said that they will be backing out of the deal? What have they said in terms of possible next steps?
I mean, they really haven't given us anything firm. It was just the call that I got from Beth saying, hey, we got to put the thing on hold for now.
Okay.
So, we fixed the allegations. It's my sense that things recover from there.
Mhm.
And yeah.
And so kind of you don't really have an understanding as of now, if you're not able to resolve this, what will happen with that deal? Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're going to pull the plug,
Okay.
but I don't know for sure.
Okay. So we can talk about, kind of based on what you've said, we can talk about a few different options here. So there's kind of two parts to this, right? So there's the acquisition with Congo, and then there's this issue with Darren. So we can kind of maybe talk about Darren first, and then we can talk about Congo. So first, I think it sounds like, again, you're really interested in suing him. That's really the way you're trying to go. You're not really interested in kind of maintaining a relationship or anything, or
no.
Okay.
He's the one that burned this relationship to the ground. I frankly don't care if he sinks in it too.
Right.
He should, for what he's done to me and my company, frankly.
Mhm. So one thing we can do first is we have to first confirm that, these comments are coming from Darren, because it sounds like, well, I mean, you also have personal knowledge of him and kind of have an understanding. We can't, we don't want to really jump the gun and, sue him without being sure that it is him who is posting these comments. So one thing we can do maybe is, hire somebody, whether it's IT, somebody, IT or somebody like that, or even a private investigator, to determine who is making these comments. And then if it is Darren, we can talk about litigation maybe.
Yeah. So with litigation, with, potentially suing Darren, if Darren is the one who is making these comments. One thing that we could look at is maybe, because it seems like there was a contract between you and Congo, and Darren seems to have interfered with the working of that contract. And he clearly had knowledge of that contract, because you said that it was in the public sphere about your acquisition deal. So we might be able to have a case against him for interference with your contract. And so with that, something that we would have to look at to weigh the strengths of your argument of our case is whether Darren had any sort of like economic justification for doing so. And usually in those situations, economic justification usually stands unless there was malice behind it. And since you said that it seems like, you parted on bad terms, you think that he's doing it for revenge, we would be able to show malice in this scenario. So, I don't want to say necessarily that we would definitely win it, but I think that there would be a strong case as long as we find out that it was in fact Darren who is perpetrating this.
And I think with that, I would also mention, so you mentioned you have some kind of some insider information regarding his practices. So I would maybe wait at this moment, wait before you do anything with that information. Because again, if we can show that he has, I think we have a strong case based on what you've been saying, that there's, strong showing for malice, but we also don't want, if he counterclaims or something, we don't want to show that you may have that. So I think before, we would have to do a bit more research before, we know what the effects of you releasing that information would be. So at the moment, we would advise you to hold off on sharing anything publicly or with any agency or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I could maybe just get a bit of clarification on that. I just don't get it, right? He's been advertising against me. He's been slandering my name, dragging me through the mud. And it's all based on nonsense.
Right.
And you're saying that now I have this report that shows, they're doing things that are unsafe. They could be hurting people. I can't go public with that.
So we're
I
not saying
can't show the
anything at the
truth.
moment. We just are saying to hold off until we kind of know what the ramifications of that would be.
Okay.
So just in this moment, before we go further, we're just saying hold off. And then once we know what that would look like for you and how that impacts anything, if you decide to sue him or go forward with litigation, how that would impact your case. We want to make sure we're covering all our bases with that.
Okay. That
So
makes
just
sense.
in that regards. And then with that also, you mentioned, because this is slander, these are false statements. So one thing we can also look at is if there is a defamation lawsuit here. So that's something we'd also have to do further research into, but it sounds like, there's, these are false statements regarding your company. And he's making if he is the one making them, then he may be making them intentionally. So we think there would be a strong case for that as well. So it's another form of litigation or another claim that you may have against him.
But with litigation, I also just want to bring out maybe some pros and cons. The pro is that the decision would be final, you would have that, they would have to stand by whatever the judge, whatever the decision is. However, it is a very lengthy process. It is time consuming. It will be expensive and it will be public. So if you would rather keep this under wraps, maybe not have the public know of this argument between or not, between you and whoever the person is that's spreading these allegations, then this might not be the route you want to go, but we have other options that we can discuss as well.
Yeah. So another option is mediation or arbitration. And so those are typically more private. So mediation is there's a neutral third party who can basically mediate between the both parties to reach a solution. And then with that, and then also there's also arbitration where basically it's again another neutral third party and they basically hear both sides of the case, we present evidence, and then they make a decision. But that usually is final. But again, that's a lot faster, cheaper. There's it's again private. So if that's also something to take into consideration. And so that's the aspect with Darren. We can talk about this a little bit more, but then there's the side with Congo. So it sounds like, you kind of want to maintain that relationship. Your last resort sounds like you're willing to sue, but
Yeah.
initially liked it to be at least amicable.
Yep.
So with that, I think, again, mediation, arbitration may be the best option there. So I think I would encourage, first, one thing we can do is actually reach out to them, send a letter to their either their legal counsel or to determine what the status of the contract is, where they're, what they're kind of where they're at in that process, what they're thinking. And then, again, mediation may be a really good strong option here, and that it's a neutral third party. They can help you kind of come to an agreement. So, if this issue with Darren or whoever is posting these false allegations is being resolved, you can still, if you can potentially move forward with Congo in this acquisition, then you can kind of resolve a lot of these issues you said you've been having with sales and the loss of profit and all that stuff. So mediation, and then kind of arbitration, again, is kind of in between mediation, litigation. But I think there's there's those few different options, but I think if you're trying to go for amicable, kind of keep this amicable and you want to keep that relationship, I think mediation is the best option here. And then, if that is not an option, then we can look towards litigation.
All right. That sounds really good.
All right. Do you find yourself leaning towards either option at this moment?
Or any option.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I want to sue Darren, and the mediation for Congo sounds like a really good idea.
All right. So we will do some research into those options, see exactly what we are going to be doing to follow up on that. But so in the meanwhile, I think we can
Kind of
get to
wrap
the
up
closing.
today, yeah.
Okay.
So just, we mentioned earlier that this consultation was completely free. Future work, though, is billed at $100 per hour of either lawyer's time.
Okay.
Right.
And so then, as we mentioned, to be mindful of kind of your time and finances with all this, there's a few things you can kind of send to us. And so, as you mentioned, any communication you've had with Congo, that news article, that would be helpful for reference, any kind of drafts of contracts, anything like that. We can send you an email with information about how to best send that to us, because I understand there's a lot of information that you have, but we will reach out to you with that information. And then if you can send us the names and addresses of all the parties involved, including who your legal representation was for the initial contract acquisition.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, great.
And then, sorry, one last thing. So just to give you an idea of what to look forward to. So we'll send you a draft of a retainer by Monday at the latest for you to review. If you have any questions, you can give us a call, or we can set up a meeting to answer any questions you have. And then once you've signed the retainer agreement, we can kind of get started on this research, focus a bit on this mediation and litigation. So the two aspects, mediation with Congo and litigation with Darren. And then we can also kind of do a bit more research about the other aspects that we talked about to kind of give you a full picture of everything.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds very good.
Yes.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
both so much.
It was very nice to meet you.
It was great meeting you both too. All right.
So how do you feel like the session went?
Right. I think we got a lot of information from the client. We know about his company, we know about the acquisition. And we, I think got the details of what happened when. But there's a lot of research to do, clearly, especially, he mentioned that there's a lot of emails. So yeah, that is just, something that we're gonna have to look into a little bit.
I think overall it went well. I think we were able to answer some of his questions.
Yeah.
I think one thing I think that will be difficult here is that we have to, right, he has this really strong feeling that it's Darren who is posting these comments, but there's no real evidence other than his strong sense that it is.
Right.
And so I think the first hurdle to even, I know he feels very strongly about suing Darren, but right, if there's no cause of action here.
Right, we need to
Right.
make sure that it is Darren before we actually go ahead and do anything. So that is, yeah.
So I think we have to determine next steps for seeing what an investigation that would look like and how we can kind of determine if we can determine who is actually posting these comments.
Yep.
And then if it is Darren, I do think that there is a strong claim for tortious interference, considering that, there is this history of malice between them, right? Even if he has some kind of economic justification.
Right, and I think they probably will try and assert an economic justification just because their companies have like similar
Right.
ideology and you know, so they probably will try to bring that up, but if it is in fact Darren and they ended on a bad note, then we would also be able to show that there's malice involved behind that, and that would sort of negate the economic justification a little bit.
Yes, and I mean, with that, we also have to just do more research about like what I mentioned with, he has this information from a client
Right.
or from somebody within the company they received. One thing we do have to follow up more on is like how for a little bit more detail about how he received that information. I think in the moment it wasn't really the priority, but we do
Yeah.
need to get further information about that. And what the impact of releasing that would be, because again,
Right.
we like, what, like, would that show malice on his part, you know, or what would the impact be? So we have to look further into that as
Yeah.
well.
Especially with since he wants to go the litigation route, you know, everything would be public, and so it would be just really, you know, not that helpful. If
Right, it
we
could get
were to-
messy,
Exactly.
for lack of
Yeah.
a better word there.
Yeah.
And I mean, also, I mean, he feels very strongly, right, about his anger towards Darren. And I mean, it's understandable, like, right,
Right.
this is his company that he's built up. It's from his father and he's
Yeah.
acquired, he kind of is going it too.
Right.
And it sounds like, you know, it's really kind of plunged after these comments.
Mhm.
So that is, you know, it's understandable that he feels so strongly about it. But again, we have to see whether there is a cause of action and also look further into defamation.
Right.
We'd have to, so he mentioned these subcontractors, something we can also get more information on is where these subcontractors are from. Is there
Yeah.
some basis about, you know,
Yeah.
we'd have to do, I guess, also do a bit more research about where, you know,
Right.
is there some
Yeah.
basis in these claims or, you know, things like that. And also, I think reading that article and some of the other messages would be helpful
Yeah.
as well with that.
And then with the acquisition deal itself, I think, you know, we have to go through this contract and just make sure that one, like if there's any language about terminating the contract before the acquisition even takes place, whether there's any language about maybe even if there's an arbitration clause or where any sort of dispute settlement would take place at all,
Right.
and see how we can move forward with hopefully getting him
I think,
the
yeah.
acquisition to take place.
But I think one thing we do have to take into account, and we have to take a step back and consider is that, right, it doesn't sound like this contract has been executed yet, right?
That is
So
true,
we
yeah.
have to look at what the effects would be, what the impact is since the contract hasn't actually been executed.
Yeah,
It's currently not a valid enforceable contract. So
yeah,
we'd have to look into what that would mean in terms of like, again, this tortious interference claim with Darren or whoever is posting these comments.
Yeah.
And then I think, you know, I think mediation is a really strong route. It sounds like, you know, he still has a good relationship with Congo.
yeah.
Understandably, they're also concerned about the comments and what that means for the
Of
company
course,
since
yeah.
there has been a significant decrease in
Sales and.
sales.
Yeah,
But, you know, I think kind of first reaching out to them and see where they're at and then seeing if mediation is something they're interested in.
yeah,
It would be a good first step. And then I think also looking into like the statute of limitations on if we were to like,
all of these
yes.
things, yes, yeah.
if we were to go forward with litigation with them, because it sounds like, I mean, understandably, Leon has like a lot at stake here, right? He was like
Yeah,
$300,000, a consulting position.
right,
I mean, his company is currently also, as we kind of said a few times, struggling. So there's a lot at stake for him as well. So we got to make sure that we're not kind of losing out on any opportunities.
definitely. All right, so we know what our next steps are,
Yeah.
and we can start moving forward and working on those.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And our second team for tonight will be Ellen Gabelmann and Christina Jefferson.
Counselors, are you ready?
Oh, sorry, you're just preparing very quickly. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Let me just grab this really quick. Ready? Yep. Yes, we
Please
are
proceed.
ready.
Thank you.
Hi, Leon. Really nice to meet you. I'm Ellen.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for coming in today. You can have a seat.
You've got a notepad and a pen in front of you if you want to take any notes, as
Oh.
well as a water bottle in case you need it. Feel free.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in today. Did you find us all right?
Yeah, I came over from Schenectady, so not too far.
So you're not that far at all.
Yeah.
And great weather tonight to get over here
Oh, yeah, totally.
outside.
Easy drive.
So I just wanted to let you know that today our conversation is going to be completely confidential. So anything you have to say, feel free. This is going to stay in the room between us. Additionally, it is going to be a free consultation. I know that sometimes billing can be a complicated question for people and might bring up some nerves for them,
Mhm.
but this consultation is going to be free today. So whatever you have to say, feel free to say it. It's just going to be a talk between all of us. And additionally, you already signed a copy, but I'm going to give you another one of your responsibilities and your rights as a client just to look over.
Thank you.
I think that's it for me.
Also, we just want to remind you that everything you say today is completely confidential. So feel free to share whatever you would like with us and we won't be disclosing it to anybody else. Before we get started, is this your first time meeting with a lawyer?
No, not exactly. So, part of my problem has to do with the business transaction. We did have an attorney in that transaction. So I'm a little familiar with how it works.
Okay, and I definitely am gonna have some more questions about that specifically.
Mhm.
Outside of that transaction with the lawyer within this business or ordeal, have you met with a lawyer otherwise?
For me personally, no.
Okay, good to know. So just a little bit about how we operate in this type of firm is we're gonna get a little bit of information from you, answer any questions that you may have, because I'm sure that you have quite a few. Also talk next steps about how we can move forward. So if at any point you have questions for us and we're maybe going a little fast, please don't hesitate to stop us and ask any questions. We may do the same thing to you just to make sure that we can get all the information that we need.
Makes sense.
So we heard that you had a little bit of an issue with the business acquisition. Would you tell us what's going on today?
Yeah, of course. So I'm a businessman, right? I'm CEO and shareholder in a company called Frozen Fresh Foods. Have either of you heard of it, used our services?
I don't believe that we have. Could you tell us about it?
Yeah, of course. So I think in order to kind of convey the degree of injustice that's been done to me here, I do need to share a bit about our product. So my vision, our vision, is to provide the entire country with fresh, nutritious, organic foods delivered direct to home in a frozen format. So we serve a whole variety of foods, really anything that you could think of. If you're trying to have a Thanksgiving dinner, we can provide all the fixings for that. If seafood's more your thing, we've got plenty of options there. Clam chowder, like as if it were straight from Boston. Our pizza, I gotta tell you, nothing really beats that. Actually, one of the ways we took off was there's this online food reviewer guy that had one of our slices, and he said it was one of the best slices he'd ever had. You know, as if it was straight from Brooklyn. Oh, and we got really good desserts too. Don't get me started on some of that. So you know, we provide our clients with a lot of goods that they're interested in. And we were doing really well at achieving our mission of, you know, serving the people as best we can, you know, making sure people are provided with things healthily and as much as they could possibly want. During COVID, we were especially successful, right? Because everyone was trapped inside. They didn't really want to, you know, go outside and have to risk exposure to a virus. They'd rather, you know, just order something online and they get it directly delivered to them. And so our business really took off. And around March, a business called Congo, you know, the big online retailer marketplace, they had reached out to us interested in acquiring the business in its entirety. And so we were going to go forward with that and do that after months of negotiations. But Then things kind of went south. We had a bunch of accusations come out against us. And right now, our business is in ruins, frankly. Sales are down something like 70% since our peak in March. In March last year. And me personally, I'm devastated by it. I can't sleep at night. I'm up until 3 a.m. thinking, how am I going to get my kids through college? I'm hoping to do that so they don't have to go into too much debt, but I don't know if it's in the cards right now, frankly. And so that's why I'm here really, is I want to see if you folks can help me in kind of tipping the scales of justice, back to make sure that, our business is able to accomplish what it set out to do, which we've been prevented from doing here.
That sounds like a really upsetting situation. I'm really sorry to hear that this is happening.
Of course, thank you.
You mentioned a couple of dates here. So you mentioned that the acquisition began in March and that your peak profits were in March. Were you referring to March of 2022?
Yes, March 2022.
Okay. And what were those peak sales?
I don't know figures off the top of my head. We were probably making a couple million sales around the country, on a projected monthly basis.
Okay. And you said that your sales have decreased 70%. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. What do you think caused that drop?
So I know what caused it. Starting when we announced the acquisition, right, with Congo, there started to be a lot of things posted online. It started with little stuff, chit chat you'd expect in something like this, like, oh, it's going to take jobs away from the area. Regular NIMBYism, people not wanting their local beloved company to be acquired by a bigger conglomerate. But then there started to be these ads posted on Facebook and other platforms that were really just nonsense. I mean, they were saying we were using unsafe foods. They were saying that we were putting dangerous chemicals in the foods and other stuff like that. And then really that all culminated in them accusing us of being responsible for human trafficking and using sweatshop and slave labor, just utterly absurd nonsense. And so, I know the guy that was behind this probably. We had this old shareholder we had to force out. It's a long story.
Could you tell us the name of that shareholder?
Sure. His name was Darren Smith, or is Darren Smith. He's still alive.
And why do you believe that he's the one making these accusations online against you?
Yeah. So back in 2015, right? Let me be frank. The guy was a little bit of a moron. He had this whole idea for our business where he was gonna, have us sell direct to restaurants and stuff like that. Frankly, it was something that wasn't going to fit our business model. So we, as a company, decided to force him out, us, the shareholders and the board. And so we kicked him out of the company, and he did not leave amicably. He said, oh, I'm going to get revenge on you guys one day. And he went off. He started his own company, Quick Meals. And they're doing all right from what I can tell. And so I'm pretty sure, he saw us announce this acquisition by Congo, right? And he's like, oh, I'm jealous of them. So I'm going to take them down a peg. I'm going to bury them. And so that's why I know he bought these ads. He did everything he could to possibly ruin both my company and me. And so he torpedoed the deal that way.
That sounds like a very frustrating situation you're dealing with. I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
What's the status of the acquisition today?
Yeah, so the acquisition right now is it's dead as far as I can tell. I mean, Jeff Jesus, the CEO of Congo, right? He called me and he said, we got to put a hold on this thing. And I said, okay, Beth, I understand. We'll see what we can do. I think if we clear up the allegations, we might be able to proceed with it. But for now, it seems dead.
And just to clarify, what was the acquisition timeline? Had you guys were you in finalization mode or not yet?
Yeah, so they actually reached out to us in, I think it was November 2021. And they were, interested in acquiring us. we're a closely held corporation in New York, so they were going to buy out myself, all the shareholders. On top of that, as a little incentive, they were going to give me a nice 300K bonus as well as a consulting position at Congo. So we went back and forth for a couple months, and finally in March of 2022, we had settled that we were going to go forward with this, and we came up with a full agreement. We both signed that agreement, and basically they had a year to actually execute the sale. Or the purchase rather. In the meantime, we were going to start exchanging some things technically about how our business works, so they could start integrating our platform onto their platform. And we did exchange some of the codes there. And at the end of all that, in March 2023, they would have executed the sale and been expected to purchase us. But now them putting that on hold, I mean, the whole thing's been thrown up into disarray. We don't know what's going to happen now.
So when we're looking at this contract here, was there anything that specifically comes to mind that was written in the contract that might compel, I'm sorry, I think I might have misunderstood. Is it condo or Congo?
Congo.
Congo with a G?
Yep.
Okay, great. That might make it, a violation of the agreement if Congo doesn't complete the buyout in a year.
So, I mean, I think so. Like looking back, there's nothing in there that I can think of that would have said they're, able to just walk from the deal. I'm pretty sure it was a contract that we had, but I can send you the full agreement if you want to look over.
That'd be very helpful for us.
Yeah, it was a bit of a long agreement, so I can't remember off the top of my head every single detail in there. But
That's understandable. That's definitely something that we'd like to take a look at, just to kind of comb through all the details and see if there's anything you might have missed or anything that we think may help your case here.
sounds good.
Are there any provisions in there, and I know you mentioned it was lengthy, that do come to mind that you wanted to talk about today?
I mean, I guess not, besides what I've already said. I mean, it was a full buyout that they were going to do of our company. They were going to purchase all our assets. They were going to purchase all the shareholders' holdings, including my own. And they were going to give me this, 300K bonus as well as a position at their company in order to see that things happened as they should have on our end.
How much were how much were your shares worth that they were gonna buy out?
Oh, that's a good question. They were going to be based on the sort of what we were trading for at the time.
Mhm.
Or, sorry, no, that's not right, because we're a privately held company. We're not publicly traded. They had something in the contract about how they were going to be valued.
Okay.
And I own 20% of the company, so they would have bought that from me. And that was in addition to the 300K bonus that they were going to be giving me.
And you're the majority shareholder?
No, I've
Okay.
got a good amount of shares, but not majority.
Okay.
So did this acquisition have the paperwork along with it that you would be able to provide us with?
Like you mean the contract that we came to? or-
Anything additional on top of that? If there was, you said it happened in March 22 is when it began. Has
Mhm.
there been any other communication, any other paperwork sent back and forth?
I mean, we've had a lot of communications in that time. I can't think of anything in terms of a document that would be an additional thing like that, but just emails, correspondence, stuff like that.
All of that would be stuff that we also are gonna want to see as well. And
Oh.
just as we think about this situation moving forward, I would recommend that one of the things you do when discussing this is limit your communication about this, especially with Congo, to written communication, so that we've got a record here. One thing that the courts really care about is how do we demonstrate and prove what's going on, right? Because we can go to them and say, here's the situation, but ultimately there is a little bit of information we're going to have to give in return for them to say, okay, we see what you're seeing. And that is, of course, if we pursue court intervention, it may not even go that far, right? And we would ultimately want to help with whatever you're interested in doing. But those are some important things. So how do you know that Darren Smith was aware of the acquisition?
So we made a public statement with
Okay.
Congo. We announced publicly that the acquisition was going to happen.
And has he reached out in any form to you after that?
No, not to me directly. I mean, I saw him on the street once and he gave me a dirty look, but that was kind of it.
So there's been no direct communication from him to you saying, I'll take you down. I'm going to start a new company, or how dare you sell to this?
No, he had started the company well before this.
So something that a court is going to look to, as Ellen said, if it does get that far, would be some very direct observable evidence that a third party is kind of coming in trying to interfere. And so what we would look to is threats he made online to you or phone calls you've received from him. But if it's limited to just a dirty look, then if your goal is to get him involved in this some way, which it sounds like you might have some negative feelings towards him and maybe put this on him for the reason that this acquisition is falling through, given that he's doing this online thing, according to you, the court is going to want very solid evidence that it is him with his name attached, and a dirty look across the street, although it might be rude or something that kind of just like ruins your day a little bit, it's not going to be something the court can look to as evidence in this case.
I know he also commented on a couple of like the posts on Facebook and stuff and his ads, and shared some of that. Said a couple things like, "Oh yeah, that sounds like them." And there's also this article that came out against us that he, I think, spoke to a reporter in. Would any of that be potentially evidence?
We would love to get a copy of that, whether you send it to us electronically or print it out and bring it to us. We could take a look at that and definitely, keep it in a file as keeping kind of a record of what he's been saying and things that have been going on. Again, I do think that would be a tough thing to prove because the internet is so vast. And, even if it has his name, it might not necessarily be him, or it's somebody posing as him. And it just gets a little complex in that way. So I don't know if, going after him in any sense, although, it might be a personal attack on your behalf, or it might be a personal offense to you. That might not be the easiest route for us to take, nor the most fruitful at the end of it.
Okay.
Do you have screenshots or anything of those ads or comments that he made, or just that? I know you say he's the one behind the ads. They might not have his name on it, but do you have those correspondence like screenshotted, or could you pull it up if you needed to?
Yeah, I mean, I screenshotted a couple things as I saw them at some point. Plus, some of it, I'd comment about it, like, oh, that's not true. So if I look back on my timeline, I could probably find that stuff.
Yeah, that's going to be really important. The more we have, the better, right? Especially with those ads, because you're claiming that they are making false statements. That's going to be relevant when we're talking about how we move forward here, right? Because ultimately we want to be able to show this is what happened and here are the results, right? Because you can demonstrate, for example, that your sales have decreased. Do you have those sales reports by chance that you could provide us?
I'm sure I could look back and get my secretary to send them to you.
Okay. That would also be something that we could use to say, okay, whoever is behind this is something tangible that came out of it, right? So that would be something that would be important for us to have so that we can really demonstrate and show there's a true 70% decrease here.
Okay,
Absolutely.
sounds good.
And now a question on Congo. I believe you said you're based out of Schenectady or the Albany area,
Yes.
your businesses?
Yep, it's connected.
Do you know where Congo's based out of?
I think California.
California, okay. So they're coming in and saying, we've seen how you run a successful business. We want that to be kind of part of our brand. Here's our offer to buy you out. And you said this seems like a good opportunity for us.
Yep, us and the board, or me and the board.
So is it you are the 20% shareholder, but also the CEO. So I'd like to know what kind of stake you hold in this, not just simply as the stakeholder and the CEO, but you are the one making the decision to come to an attorney about this. Now, is there somebody else that you need to contact about that? Or is anybody else on the board interested in gaining an outside attorney?
I mean, I don't know why it's my business. My dad founded it in 2001, and yeah, I have a 20% interest, but it's my business and I'm the CEO. I don't see why I shouldn't be able to go out and get an attorney for myself and the business.
Did you have any in-house counsel before this?
So yeah, we had an attorney, not in-house counsel, sorry. We had an attorney that helped us with the deal. But yeah, they weren't in-house.
Which attorney was that?
What was his name? Kyle Rolls,
Okay.
I think was it.
And so why didn't you go to Kyle about this initially? We're obviously very happy to speak with you about this, but sometimes it's nice to have somebody that has, experience with the deal.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I should get a fresh set of eyes to kind of look everything over.
Okay. Was there anything that led to maybe the relationship between you and Kyle going bad in the past?
Not really between us. He was helpful with the deal, but you know, I feel like he's talked to not only me, but a lot of people on the board and, you know, some of the other shareholders. And I just want to make sure that my interests and everything are protected.
Completely understand that. I do want to kind of, just as a note to keep in the back of your head, given that there are other shareholders and you're only at 20%, I do understand you're the CEO and your dad founded the company, which is a great accomplishment for him. But since other people do hold a stake in the company, they may be interested in you reaching out to counsel, given that it's not a personal private matter that you're taking care of. It's not a car accident you got in or anything like that. It is a company being sold and other people may have something to say about that.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that we can't help you out specifically, but what it does mean is that we might have to involve some other people so that they're aware of the steps that you're taking here. Because what we wouldn't want to happen is that the shareholders on the board get wind that you've met with an attorney and then they perceive it as something that it's not, right? You don't want somebody to get a negative impression. And so we want to help make the situation better. We wouldn't want it to become worse for some reason.
Okay.
What's your relationship like with the other shareholders, other members of the board?
I mean, it's been good.
Okay.
We were on the same page when it came to the acquisition, but you know, now a couple of them, I don't know, like people have said some stuff like, hey, Leon, like, you know, maybe someone should take the fall for this, kind of seeming to imply like me, but I mean, I don't get it. It's my company. My dad founded it.
And that's a
Yeah.
very frustrating situation to be put in.
Yeah.
So is there any obligations that you have, are there any other obligations that you had that are impacted by this buyout? Now that things have gone bad, have you gone bad on any other business deals? How else has it impacted your business?
I mean, it's ruined us financially. We've, you know, lost all the sales. Personally, it's affected me too. I feel like I'm now becoming kind of a black sheep in the industry where, you know, no one's gonna want to take me on if, you know, we're not able to get this Congo thing together and go forward with that. So, you know, it's ruined the business. I don't know if the business is going to be able to rebound from everything, and it's ruined me personally.
Yeah.
And Darren, frankly, should pay for it, is my opinion, is he's done all this damage. And one way or another, I'll make sure he pays for it. If it's a lawsuit, great. If not, I have other means.
What do you mean by that?
So I actually got in luck. He fired some guy from his company who I happened across, and it turns out this guy saved a copy of a report. It's pretty evident that they are not doing what they need to in terms of FDA standards for making sure that they're taking care of their food, you know, nice and safe. So, you know, I figure he's said all this stuff against me that's complete nonsense. You know, I might as well drop a little truth on the public against him.
Now, I can completely understand where you're coming from, and it is very frustrating when a competitor and somebody that used to be in your business isn't living up to the standards that you have held for your own business. I can see that.
Mhm.
I do want to advise that it's not in your best interest or anybody's to take those steps towards him to try to get revenge. I know that you said you may want to file a lawsuit against him. As I said earlier, it's kind of going to be difficult if him being online saying these comments about you are what you're going off of. I am going to say that that's likely to be a difficult course for you to take. So it probably wouldn't be recommended at that point. And also, revenge is not going to look good for you or your business. And it sounds like you are interested in maintaining your reputation and maintaining that acquisition and kind of pushing that through with Congo. So, you know, if it gets out in the news or online again that you're personally going against him and leaking secrets of his company, I just can't imagine that that would go as well as you would hope it would.
Okay, I'm not entirely sure if I get it though. So he's able to just go out there and post all this stuff against me and spread all this nonsense, completely baseless. And yet, if I want to go and if I want to say something that's true about his company that could actually hurt people, hurt consumers, I can't do that, or else I'm gonna face consequences for it. Why shouldn't he face, you know, all the consequences for lying?
That's definitely a good point. Where the way that we see it here, and one of our duties that we see to you is to be that third party that can look at situations that sometimes can be emotional and say, okay, how do we balance your interests here to make sure that you really come out on top? Now, I understand how frustrating it is, and I know that you really believe that he's the one that came out and said these things against you. The thing that's limiting us here is we just need to be able to prove that he is the exact one. We've got the Facebook comments. That's great. it sounds like we might need to do some additional research before we were to initiate a lawsuit, right? And take this to court. Really where we're coming from is less about the injury to his reputation that could come if you were the one to put the article out here, and more about him sitting down with a lawyer and saying the same things you're saying to us, right? I know this person put things out there and they did it to hurt me. And we just wouldn't want that to hurt your interests either. We want your company to come out on top here. And it sounds like one of your goals is to have this deal ultimately go through. Is that correct?
Yeah, I definitely like to see that continue.
That's great. So if we want that deal to go through, I don't know how it would look to Congo if all of a sudden, even if it's baseless, somebody files a lawsuit against you for dropping that article. So we would just caution you against doing that for now and hold off until we can see what other solutions we can reach for you first. Is that fair?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I will say I have started kind of an advertisement campaign, not referencing that stuff, but we put up a couple billboards and ads.
And what do those say?
It's saying, hey, their food is less nutritious than ours. Quick meals isn't as high quality as frozen to fresh.
So that type of, ad campaign, it is something that you see out of regular businesses every day saying, my phone carrier is better than this phone carrier, so you should be with us, things like that.
Mhm.
I think in terms of, you said that you're worried about his FDA regulation adherence in his own company. That is something that in the future we could talk about possible, if you really are fearing for somebody's health, we'd have to do a little more research before going into this. But maybe a whistleblower type action could come out of that, because if people's safety is at risk, that could be something to look into. But I don't think that's really the key issue here right now. I do want to warn you against, taking any steps towards defaming him in any sense. I know that's very frustrating given that he's done that to you, but try to restrict yourself in that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just need to do a little more research first before we decide what's the next best step, right? So, just to recap here, it sounds like your top priorities are having the deal go through, potentially a little bit of revenge, which again, we're going to caution against for a minute because there might be some other solutions that might get you to what you want with the deal going through. Sounds like family is a big motivator for you too, right? You got kids, you want them to go to college, and your reputation. Are there any other goals that you have?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay.
I would say the biggest thing I think is I feel like I want Darren to pay for what he's done to me and my company.
And that's completely understandable.
That's my number one. The Congo deal, I definitely want it to go through, and if it came to it and I had to sue them to be able to kind of recover for what they've done to me, then great. But Darren right now is kind of my biggest enemy in this, I think.
Okay. So before we move forward with anything about pushing this acquisition through or anything like that, I do want to go over a couple options for you, just so you know kind of what's out there. This is ultimately your decision of what you want to do, pending making sure the board members aren't people who are required to be part of that conversation. So I think mediation could be a very good option for you, where you sit down with Congo, maybe their CEO or a couple other members, and there's a third party present who will listen to both sides and kind of guide a conversation for the two of you. And you can come to a written signed agreement at the end of it that maybe it goes through, maybe part of the acquisition goes through, maybe you wait a little bit longer. They're all options. So it's easier because you're not in court. So you're not waiting on the court to schedule you. It's a much shorter, less expensive process. And it kind of just leads to a settlement agreement between the two of you. Additionally, just a casual conversation or an email could go very far, because it sounds like, they came to you wanting your company. So they're in it to lose something as well. And maybe some reassurance on your end would do some benefit. for
Okay.
you.
You said I should hold off from contacting them though in the meantime?
You can contact them. We just
Okay.
said keep it to writing. That way we can go, you can provide it to us. And if we do end up needing to go to court for some reason, we can use that to just demonstrate the chain of events that happened. And with Congo, since we've got that deadline coming up in March, right, before they, that's kind of like the hard stop before they start breaching the contract, right, not performing on what they said if the acquisition doesn't go through. I think having a conversation first, letting them know if you want to move forward with us, that you've retained us, could be a nice way to segue before we get to that mediation part. And that could also be something that we do with Darren. Ultimately, is maybe we sit down or we send a letter to him and just say, hey, we've been retained. We were notified that there were some allegations against you here. So we can maybe get both sides of the story, and maybe he even provides us with a little more proof than we had before. Because I know Darren's your top priority. We're talking about the business here because we don't want you to lose more than you already have, ultimately. Another thing that we can do is arbitration, which is similar to mediation, but it is before somebody that's acting like a judge. And ultimately, they're the ones that are going to determine the outcome there, and it is binding. The last thing, and we wouldn't want to get to this point unless it was something that made the most sense for you, is trial. It's a roll of the dice. It's ultimately, if, for example, if you sued Darren, we're going to have a judge that's going to say whether or not he's at fault. So I know that we gave you a lot to consider today, and we think that you've got some conversations that you should go have first with some other people that are involved to make sure that they're aware that you're retaining an attorney so that you don't create, any strife within your relationships. So what we would need to do is execute a retainer, which is an agreement that retains us as your attorney. Ultimately, if you don't decide to move forward with us, it's still a completely confidential conversation that we had here tonight. Our fee is $300 an hour. I know that you've had some financial troubles. We can always talk payment plans if it's something that you want to do. Once you retain, we're able to do a little more research on some of the things that we talked about here tonight. And if we don't hear from you by next week, we'll reach out and see if you have any other info. I'm also going to follow up with an email so that we have a list of the things that you wanted to get back to us, the agreement, the emails, everything that has to do with Darren and the acquisition.
Okay,
Awesome.
sounds good.
Thank you so
Great meeting
much.
you.
Yes.
I do have my card. If you have any questions that come up, feel free to reach out to us.
Okay.
It was really great to get to hear it tonight.
Thanks. It was great meeting with you guys too.
Drive safe.
Thanks. You too. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, goodness.
Man, there's a lot that he had on his plate there.
I'm a little worried about Darren being his #1 priority, given that, revenge isn't going to be well situated in this case, because yeah, maybe personally when you're young, like this might be something you want to go after, but he's got a business that's on the line and he's got a reputation he's trying to uphold. So slandering somebody in the media or saying, their food's not safe might not be the best option, especially if you don't have proof that their food's not safe.
Yeah, I think that ultimately when I think about this client, I think that there are quite a few things that need to be worked out on his end, right? He has a lot of decisions to make. And I think we tried to highlight that to him so that he could understand, hey, this ultimately is going to be up to you with how you proceed. But ultimately, if he wants to only pursue moving forward with Darren, that might be something where we advise him, this might not be the best agreement for you to enter into with us.
Especially because, if he starts to argue something like, oh, the acquisition would have gone through if not for Darren coming in and saying these things online. Like I said, like we told him, the proof is going to be almost the most important part of this. And proving that is not something the court takes lightly. So they're going to want, phone calls with his voice and emails from his personal email. And that's not what comments online are.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that you did a really good job of being honest with him up front and saying, hey, these are the things that we need. Vague and conclusory allegations are not what's going to be able to get us to move forward. And he does seem like somebody that wants to pursue action within the courts and might move to that fairly quickly if he doesn't feel like we're getting him the results that he wants. And ultimately, I don't know that that'll play well in his favor if we don't do the proper steps in the beginning. And so I think getting our hands on that agreement is going to be really important. I really want to see what these ads look like, right? Because sometimes these things can be subjective and he's in such an emotional spot. And so is there an ad that maybe was actually totally fine, but he saw it and it really took it to heart? I don't know.
And then I can't help but feel a little weird about how he has 20%. He's the CEO and that says something, but having 20% of the shares, I do think that maybe somebody else should have been here today. Maybe other board members should have, talked to him about if they all agreed upon an attorney. And obviously I'd love to help him with this, but this is something where I don't want to be stepping on toes of board members who then take offense to that or have, a legal route as to he shouldn't have hired a lawyer. And he wants his reputation. There's no way that going behind the board members' backs is going to turn out well for him.
I agree. And I think that he might be somebody that, might take some time to think on it and might not. And I think that our next touch point with him, we, make sure that we answer any questions that he has, but we also ask, did you get the chance to talk to any of your board members about this?
He seemed kind of hesitant to do so. And I get that it might be a pride thing of, his father started the company in 2001 and this is, a family business that's continued on. And maybe he feels a little uncomfortable or stressed, maybe overwhelmed because the business is tanking under his name and there's something going wrong when he's in charge and it's not when his dad was in charge. So holding this family line might be a very stressful situation for him. And he's looking for personal attacks because that's what he's getting from Darren.
That's a good point. And when I think about it too, he might be able to retain us without disclosing to the shareholders, and we can then assist him in having those conversations too. Now, I think we need to be really clear about the ethical line here. He's got a different interest in this than the rest of the shareholders. I don't know that it would be appropriate for us to represent the rest of them, but could we get something set up where we maybe refer them to some other counsel that we work really well with so that we can all, you know, put together a strategy for how we move forward on the business stuff? That'd be great. I'm curious to hear what other people think about the Darren situation.
I am too, because this sounds incredibly personal. And I can't imagine that every other shareholder, unless they were all there at the time that Darren had to be forced out, I can't imagine they're all holding this vendetta against him.
That's a good point. And that makes me think too, another thing when I send my follow-up email with, you know, some of the documents that we'd like to look over for him is we can ask for Darren's personnel file. I'd like to corroborate what he said about that. You know, did he really get forced out or did Darren actually quit? You know, what does that look like here? Because you know, there might be an incentive for our client here, or he's not our client yet, but there might be an incentive to not be 100% truthful at the beginning because he is so interested in building his company back up. And I can certainly understand that, but I want to make sure that we're being honest with him too, based on a full picture.
Absolutely. And I'm a little frustrated that he's so focused on Darren. I feel like he'd have a much better time kind of going for the contract aspect of the Congo agreement. Because, you know, as you said, March is going to be coming up in a few months now, and it's going to move by pretty quickly. So if they don't hold up their end of the bargain, there could be something to do there. There could be a little more leeway for us to file something against them or take something into mediation about that. But Darren, it sounds more just like a dispute between people who used to know each other.
Yeah. And one thing that we could do is even propose to him that we're going to take on the piece about the acquisition. We don't have to take both issues on, right? Especially if we don't think that that's what our expertise lies in, right? We can definitely consult with another lawyer in the area that we think might be a better representative for him in that situation.
I do think the whistleblower aspect that I mentioned very briefly, it could be important because FDA regulations are there for a reason. So if that report is true and their actual findings that, you know, he's not living up to those standards, that is incredibly important to tell the public.
Absolutely. And I do think that we've got a couple of elements here. If we're looking at, was the contract interfered with? Maybe. We know we've got a contract. We know that Darren, it's possible that he could be aware of it, right? We don't know for sure.
Just because the public knows doesn't mean Darren.
Just because the public knows doesn't mean Darren knows, but there's a way he could have found out, right? They put the press release out there. Now, again, and we've seen this in cases in the city. I'd be curious about how it looks up here in Albany. And also, I think we would have jurisdiction over looking at, well, I believe Darren lives here. Is that correct? Yeah. We may need to clarify that just to make sure that we're in the right jurisdiction, but that could be an important piece is making sure that, you know, those interference with the contract claim that we might want to make would be based out of an Albany jurisdiction. So we can.
Congo is out of California. So
right.
That puts us in a little bit of a different position.
Yeah. And so I just want to make sure that wouldn't complicate anything, or maybe there's a really compelling case law out of California with that. And that might not be the right case for us if that's the case, since we practice here in New York. But again, we do also need the damages. And it sounds like those are provable, actually. We've got some, with a company like this, they do have records. So I'd be curious to see what those look like. And I just want to make sure that we can match up the story that we got here tonight with what we can prove.
And he did mention dollar amounts a lot. So I have to assume that he is kind of focused on the money as much as he's saying, you know, kind of Darren ruined this for me. Darren's the reason this is all happening. He did say, you know, I was getting $300,000 on top of being offered a job and they were buying us out completely. And, you know, they were going to do this and that for me. So losing that is losing the $300,000, the new job, and the, you know, like the secure feeling that you get with knowing that your company is being handed off in full to somebody else.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think ultimately, if this is a client that we take on, again, every step of the way, we're going to have to be extremely realistic with him, because we wouldn't want him to feel like we set him up to fail. Ultimately, that's really important to me.
Especially when we see the personal grievance he has with Darren. That's something that I think we do have to make sure we maintain that with him, saying, you know, you can't take those steps. I know you want to, but you can't really do it. It's not in your best interest. It's not in the company's best interest. It might just be embarrassing for your company at that point.
Yeah, very tempting. I'm sure from his side of things, but ultimately, if we can't come to an agreement on how to proceed here, we're not going to be able to advocate in his best interests. And so I think we just continue to keep that at the forefront.
I do want to look over that agreement that they both signed because he said it was a lengthy one. So you never know what's going to be hidden in there. You never know, the previous attorney who did it. Maybe there was maybe it was a form he usually used to fill out. Maybe it was something where he had his own personal touch in there. And it's something we're going to want to look over for sure.
I think that we also, and maybe we follow up with him on this too, we get the contact information for Kyle, because I'd be curious to hear how the dealings went when they were putting things together. Why did they include certain provisions, right? So if we can have somebody that was in the room that can explain that to us, that might help us be better advocates and better able to understand the contract as well. If that's something that ultimately he's comfortable with, and if we do end up moving forward with this client.
And maybe Congo's taken on other businesses before and they kind of just use their own contract that they're used to. We really
That's a
don't
good
know.
point. Yeah, I think ultimately some next steps here, we need to take a look at those documents, right? Any emails he's got about it, the agreements that he's signed, potentially talking to Kyle, those articles, the sales reports, the ads, we've got a lot that we need to get from the client. So ultimately, I'm happy to send that email to him. If you're able to do some research here to see if we've got anything in contract, because ultimately I think we can agree. I don't know that Darren, and I think we need to be honest with him. I don't know that the Darren matter is the one that we should move forward with.
I agree.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the judges are now going to go deliberate. So please rise. Sir.
There. Then when they come back in.
And Rebecca. Thank you. You guys can say. Yeah, team light can come in too. While the judges are deliberating, I would like to take the opportunity to say thank you to some people without whom the competition would never have been the success that it was this year. First and foremost is my associate, John Clovis. Thank you for everything that you've done this past semester, from emailing 1 million people a day, to just putting up with me. Without you, this competition wouldn't have been possible or nearly as fun. Most importantly, thank you for being a good sport every time I beat you at risk. Luckily, I did it 2-3 times, enough. Luckily for you, we have a whole nother competition next semester for you to step up your skills. And if you're lucky, maybe one day beat me. Next, I would like to thank Rebecca Novick, our moot court board executive director. I'm not turning my head that way, sorry. Few words could truly express how appreciative I am for your help and support throughout this entire semester. I truly don't know what we would have done without you, and I can't imagine anyone else I would want to be executive director this year. Thank you for your patience and guidance, and more patience and more patience. I promise you won't be getting too many last-minute day of emergency text messages in the spring. We're practically pros at running competitions now, thanks to you. I would also like to thank the other members of the moot court board for their assistance this year. Thank you for serving as last-minute clients, judges, and room organizers. Thank you to all the attorneys who volunteered their time to come judge the competitions, and all of the first-year students who volunteered as well. Their names are listed on the back of the program. And I would like to extend thanks to Teresa Colbert and John Collins. I saw you wherever you are, you walked in. There he is, the man. as well as Professor Johar, the Moot Court Board Advisor, for making this and all the other moot court events possible. And last but certainly not least, I would like to give a tremendous thank you to the Client Counseling Competition Advisor, Professor Joseph Connors. This competition would not have been as successful without his help and support. Thank you for everything. And if I've learned anything this semester, it's that you're a great professor and a better man. And I need to learn grammar more. So if Professor Connors would come forward, we have a small token of our appreciation. And at this time, we would like to present awards to our octo-finalists, quarterfinalists, and semifinalists. When I call your name, if you are here, please come down and receive your award. Anna Adams. They Elman.
Oh,
Tyler.
if you're here and you come down for a certificate, we'll get a photo. So just, if you want to come back and get a photo, you can.
Okay, come over here.
Gonzalez. Paige Gatto. Colin Reed. Carol Laporta.
Thank you.
Shelby Lawrence. Jessica Mahoney Melendez. Catherine Morse. Michael Schultz. Jacqueline Williams. Come up. All right, moving on to quarterfinalists. Kayla Curdy. Mary Glover. Tasni Madani. You know. They told me they weren't coming. So. John Penman. Ewan Phillip. Claire Stafford. Brianna Wagner. Raymond Weiss. And Alexander Weiler. Kimberly Nayar. Miss Hunter. Max Stever. Natalie Turner. The judges are still deliberating, so hang tight. I know the anticipation is killing everyone, but you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. So just hang out. I could try to stand up for everyone, but I don't think any of us got that. Okay.
All right, so we're gonna go over some feedback and then we'll give the finalists or tell you who won. It's an honor to preside. Both teams were amazing and it's always difficult to pick a winner. So I'm gonna just start with some feedback. So I'll start with Nikita and Shivani. I thought that your introduction was really good, especially with introducing yourselves with your pronouns. I think it was really good to allow the client to feel comfortable with that introduction. Let's see. I thought that you were active listeners, both of you. You were able to ascertain the key issues and talk about some of the concerns that you had throughout. I thought the client did have quite a tangent and he went on a little long, and I know you wanted to let him express himself. So I think the only balance is maybe interrupting a little sometimes to gather some more follow-up questions to be more interactive. I thought great follow-up with asking to get the memos and all the notes. And also finding out that there is that other issue with regard to the information that he wants to leak about the other company. So very good job. I'm going to turn to Ellen and Christina. I thought it was a nice touch to have the paper and pen and that prepared for the client when you walked in. I thought you had good energy between the two of you, a nice balance. Christina, you're very direct, and I felt I labeled you as the Debbie Downer, and then I felt that Ellen was a good balance because then she would pull out the positive part of it, which is important. I think the client needs to know the bad and the good. So I thought that was a good balance between the two of you to be able to work off of one another to give the client some realistic expectations. And let's see what else I have here. I also thought you were both really good active listeners and you were able to ascertain the underlying issues as well as some of the more nuanced ones. So that's what I'm going to share. I'm going to turn to Mr. Safranko to share some of his feedback.
Thank you. First of all, the four of you were amazing. And when I was here a long time ago, there was no way that I would have that much poise or the ability to do what you guys did. So you should be congratulated. I'm a strong proponent of the moot court program. When I was here, I did a lot of it. So keep up the good work with that. And then just individually, you know, Nikita and Shivani, I thought you guys were very good and you had a clear, exceptional knowledge of the legal issues and, you know, on defamation, the criminal lawyer in me, when he talked about FDA disclosure and you guys ignored it, I was like, oh my God, because what piques my interest, but then when you went back to it, I thought it was good. And sometimes it is good when you're meeting with a client to let something bad happen and then go back to it. And then Ellen and Christina, I thought you guys just complimented each other very well. Like you, as Judge Ryba said, you yinged and yanged it very well. When you may have been jumping a little bit to a conclusion about the law, you're like, well, maybe we could also do this or research it until, so I thought that was really good. And I just thought everything was excellent. So great job.
So they said everything I was gonna say. When I was here, I did some of the competitions and I didn't win. So I was so tempted to write my own name down. They talked me off that ledge. No, you all did a very good job, and you lived up to the expectations because you were hyped before you walked in this room. And so I do commend you all for that. The only thing I'm gonna add is two things that you may want to look out for, because neither team I felt did as good of a job as I probably would have liked. I would have on the confidentiality piece. And it would have been interesting for me to hear from the client as to how he felt. I know that there was some information that he did not reveal that we know about. Like, for example, that he paid the guy who got the information on the other company. He paid them quite a bit of money to get that from him. But so I would be curious. I felt like maybe you could have addressed more that, and you said it, it's just maybe stressing it. Even if you decide not to go with us, we cannot reveal anything you tell us, but it is really important that you're honest with us, that you give us the answers, you know, all the information we're gonna need so that we can best help you, knowing that we can't tell anybody. And then the other thing was during your self-assessments, and if you did this and I didn't catch it, I apologize, but I didn't hear either one of you talk about your strengths and weaknesses as within the competition, you know, your skills sets. And maybe that's because you felt you did wonderful, and that's good. You know, there's nothing wrong with being self-confident, but I didn't hear that part, and we're supposed to consider that as part of your evaluation when we're doing it. So just keep that in mind. Just point out for yourselves what you think you may have done poorly, or maybe you could improve upon, and what you thought you did very well for the next time. But good job. If anybody was nervous, you did not come across as nervous, and that's always task number one for me. So good job.
Thank you.
And so again, congratulations, both teams are amazing. Very close, but the winner of the competition is Ellen and Christina.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're supposed to do.
I would like to congratulate our winners. Barbary has provided both of our finalists with prizes, and those can be picked up at the Bears office. I would like to thank our judges this evening for giving up your valuable time. We have a small. Finally, thank you to everyone that came tonight. I hope that you can join us for reception in the East Foyer. Please take note that the food, we're gonna wait to serve it until the judges and competitors get down. So you could go down, crack into a White Claw maybe, but just wait for the food until everyone gets down. So thank you all for coming and have a great night.
Finalists. We have the two last games.
No.